So today we're taking a look around Sydney Harbour. We're going to look at the Harbour Bridge, which is right behind me, and then we're going to walk over and take a nice little trip to the Opera House. So let's just talk about the bridge for a minute. So before the Sydney Harbour Bridge was to be built, this area that we call Sydney and Sydney Harbour was home to the Eora people. And in 1788, when the Europeans settled, a lot of the people were displaced and lost their home because of the settlement and development of Sydney Harbour. In 1815, Francis Greenway, who was a convict and architect, suggested that a bridge be built from Dollars Point to the north shore of Port Jackson to connect both sides of the harbour. And although the bridge was introduced as an idea in 1815, it didn't become an actual reality until the 1900s, even though there were some proposals in the mid to late 1800s for the bridge. So, in 1900, the Minister of Works at the time of Sydney held a design competition, and J.C.C. Sullivan, who would eventually become the chief engineer on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, became involved around this time. On July 28, 1923, the turning of the first sod ceremony was held on the North Shore, and construction of the bridge officially began. The foundations of the bridge, which are 12 meters long, are set in sandstone, and sandstone is a common rock formation found around Sydney. 5 years later, the erection of the arches began. And on August 19, 1930, construction of the arches finished and the arches touched for the first time. And incredibly, before the arches officially touched, they were only 13 millimeters apart, which is a crazy, incredible feat for the engineering at the time. The bridge was officially opened for traffic on March 19, 1932, after almost 9 years of construction. In 1988, the bridge was declared an International Historical Civil Engineers Landmark. Today, the bridge is one of Australia's most photographed, most recognized, and most lovable landmarks. It stands 134 feet above sea level, above the harbour, and is known as the coat hanger because of its arch design. But the bridge also had significant impact. 16 workers died during the construction of the bridge due to the fact that they didn't use any safety equipment or safety harnesses. And in preparation for building the bridge, almost 800 families in the area were displaced and their houses were demolished, and they received and have yet to receive any compensation. The bridge also created the barrier between the suburbs to the east and the west, and this change separation was kind of regarded as unavoidable, inevitable, just a human cost. The bridge's visual impact is also noteworthy. It stands almost 134 meters, which is like 3 times the height limit of what the height ordinance and the height limit of Sydney was at the time. The bridge also brought considerable traffic, and with that traffic, significant carbon emissions. With the bridge, it catalyzed the development and growth into North Sydney, which is great for development, but also people were encouraged to buy cars and get their transport, and with 8 traffic lanes and 2 rail lanes, that's a significant amount of traffic, and as a result, a significant amount of carbon emissions. So that's all I really have to say about the Sydney Harbour. It's a great place. It's really easy to just walk across the bridge. There are some great lookout points. You get a wonderful view of Sydney Harbour. So just take the time to come out and walk across the bridge, view the bridge. It's a pretty amazing sight. So we made it over to the Sydney Opera House, which is regarded as one of the most recognizable buildings and icons of Australia and of the world. The Opera House was built on land that was sacred to the Gadigal people for thousands of years. It has become one of the most recognizable buildings of the 20th century. The Opera House sits on Benelong Point and took 14 years to build. Construction began in 1959 and didn't end until 1970. It is the focal point of the Sydney Harbour and is acclaimed as an international architectural icon of the 20th century, with its soaring sail-shaped roofs and set atop a red granite platform. The Opera House was designed by a Pulitzer Prize-winning Danish architect and creative genius, Bjørn Utzon. Complicated engineering problems, which ended up taking 4 years to solve, caused public distress about the building of the Opera House and escalated the cost of the Opera House significantly. The roof sails were based on the geometry of a sphere. In designing the Opera House, Utzon took inspiration from the natural environment of Sydney. His goal was to emulate Sydney's organic elements, and the design was partially inspired by the sandstone heads at the entrance of Sydney Harbour. The roof sails were constructed of concrete, granite, and ceramic, with white shell used as a contrast. The granite underwent a process of needle hammering that gave a matte look and was meant to help the granite blend evenly. So we're going to keep walking so we can get a better view of the Opera House and see what else we can learn about the Opera House. As said before, the Opera House was built on Benelong Point, which was originally a small tidal island that consisted of rocks with a small beach. Benelong Point, which is significant for its history of the intelligence and interactions between Aboriginals and non-Aboriginal cultures in Australia, was named after Benelong, a prominent Aboriginal figure in and around the European settlement of Sydney Harbour. There are also many early Aboriginal associations with the site. Material in rock shows that Aboriginal people inhabited the area during the last ice age about 20,000 years ago, when the coastline was about 35 kilometers further out than it is now. After about 6,000 years ago, the melting of ice flooded the area, and as early as 3,000 years ago, there appears to have been a major increase in the Aboriginal population. Benelong Point was known to the Aboriginal people as Sydney Harbour. The settlement of Sydney Harbour, along with an outbreak of smallpox, catalyzed the disintegration of the Aboriginal social structure in the area. Physical traces of the population can still be seen within view of the Sydney Opera House and shell beads and engravings. So now we're going to see a look inside the Opera House and finish up this segment. Today, the Opera House is a national cultural center and has gained an incredible reputation as a reflection of a pivotal moment in Australia's creative history. In describing the beauty of the Opera House, an American architect stated, "The sun did not know how beautiful its light was until it was reflected off its building." So that's it for this segment. It's getting pretty late. I have to go back to uni, so we're going to come back tomorrow to check out the Royal Botanic Gardens. Thank you so much. And we've made it to the Botanic Gardens, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the history of the Botanic Gardens. In its over 200-year history, the Royal Botanic Gardens has undergone incredible transformation. The original owners of the gardens were the Gadigal people. Wakemagully is a ground artwork along the farm path, a path that leads from the Opera House to Mr. Perry's Point. The names of men, women, animals, tools, and rituals from the groups of Sydney are etched onto the path. Originally, the gardens were bushlands full of native vegetation, plants, flowers, and trees that were produced in the area, such as eucalypts, native fuchsias, and swamp oaks to name a few. However, that all changed with the European settlement of Sydney. With the arrival of the first explorers, old vegetation was cut down to make space for future gardens, which newcomers saw as necessary for their survival. Okay, so welcome back. We're walking through the gardens, and actually I just ran into my friend Johnny over here. She's a native Australian. Introduce yourself, I guess.
Hey, I'm Shani.
Shawnee's from the Gold Coast. But yeah, we were just talking about kind of the history of the gardens because we're in here exploring it, all that stuff, and she wanted to know a little bit more about the actual foundation of the garden, so I figured I'd talk a little bit about it with Shawnee here in case she had any questions about it. So, before the European occupation, the land now known as Farm Cove was Wahenma Gully, and it was used as an initiation ground for the Gadigal people. Pretty cool. We've kind of taken it over now, but in 1810, Lachlan Macquarie, who was governor, established the domain and the gardens, and he established strict regulations, including grazing, planting in the domain in order to kind of preserve its naturalness. He also removed buildings in the area. And on June 13th, 1816, he finished the road that ran from Fly to Miss Macquarie's chair, and that's kind of marked as the day that the garden was officially founded. Yeah. I don't know. So to wrap up the day, I decided to ask my co-producer Jessica to meet me in the garden so we can kind of admire some of the beauty and talk about a little bit of the history just to finish off this documentary. So Jessica, I don't know if you knew, but a bulk of the gardens were built in the 19th century, which is kind of why it has a Victorian feel to it, which I found pretty interesting. And the gardens, while it is such a beautiful place to read or walk or run and do yoga, hang out with your family, it's also a center for ongoing scientific research. So one of the most visited areas of the garden is the Wollemi pine. And actually, several species of the Wollemi pine, once thought to be extinct, were found in a sandstone gorges near Sydney in 1994, and one was replanted in the gardens.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any questions about the gardens. It's kind of what
I actually do. I've been around here a few times, and these gardens are just so huge. But how big is it really?
Yeah, so the Sydney Botanical Gardens contains the actual gardens themselves and the domain surrounding the gardens. Total there's 64 hectares, the gardens being 30 hectares and the domain being 34 hectares.
Okay, pretty cool. But really, how many plants are in these gardens?
Yeah, there's so many plants. So there's, in the gardens themselves, almost 9,000 plant species.
9,000?
And then adding to that, we have about 67,000 plant specimens. There's almost 4,000 trees planted in the Royal Botanic Gardens and in the domain surrounding area. And there's approximately 1.2 million preserved plant specimens in the herbarium around in New South Wales. They're also I just think it's really a magical place because the gardens are actually home to some of the oldest trees in Sydney. There's the swamp mahogany, the Sydney red gum, the swamp oak, and the southern mahogany. And I just think it's such a beautiful place to be because you're surrounded by so much history and so much plant life and so much just naturalness, and it's always just such a beautiful place.
I agree. It's a wonderful piece of greenery, right?
I think so. So that's all we have for this episode of J&J. And don't forget, you can't spell Sydney Harbour without Y-O-U.
Catch you later.
Yeah, I really like it coming here because it's just a nice place to read and relax. And I took a nap there the other day, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, I just feel like it's very important to be near nature. And that you should always take the chance to hug a tree, right?
Definitely. Back in Florida and in the US, we don't have these many
Such a great feeling.
I'm sorry, we're filming a